skip the details. So how do you do that when you're blocking in a portrait? Every time a portrait teacher talks to students about portraiture, they talk about how the head is essentially a kind of egg, right? So I'm actually going to start out with a pretty broad shape for the head that just gives us the vaguest inkling of what this head shape is going to be like. So once you have that, you think about where your light is coming from and try to consider what kind of shadow and light dynamic would be created by this. Now, naturally, I don't have to guess. We can look at this source image and say that there should be a shadow on this lower left-hand side. Then I should, of course, have the rest of the head more or less in light. Now, there will eventually be like a gradation in between light and shadow that runs through here. But with this, I more or less kind of have that egg shape in place. And I'm going to show you how to kind of transition from this awkward egg shape into something that's a little bit more naturally human. The second point that I want to bring up, if we're trying to paint the fastest way that we possibly can, there is one really important stipulation, and it is use big brushes. None of your #1 rounds, none of your tiny filberts are really going to do. This one is maybe a little bit smaller than my index finger, and I think for the size of head that I'm making, this is how I would do it, and this is the size brush I would use. So we need to make some concessions to the fact that this is a head, and the first thing that I'm going to do is start to indicate the eye sockets. While I want to communicate the eye sockets, I don't want to do so in a way that compromises my leave out the details or kind of skip the details premise. So the first thing I'm doing is just kind of blocking them in as rather deep eye sockets. And I'm going to make a different value for each one on each side of the head, because I think that eventually the eye socket that's on the right-hand side, or is in the light shape, is in fact quite a bit lighter than the one that's over here in shadow. So I've got my eye sockets kind of blocked in, and I've used that kind of Van Dyke Z, that shape that goes under the brow here, down the nose, and down the bottom plane of the nose as well, to kind of establish the basic proportion of the face. At this point then I need to start to kind of surround the face, or at least make the overall kind of shape of the face more or less arrive. But I'm going to bring up now my next key point in how to block in really, really fast. And it's what you're seeing me do here. Use really bold values. When we think about skipping detail, sure, we can skip all the detail of the features of the face, but you can also skip details in terms of value, right? Like I'm choosing just a couple basic value groups to represent the entire light shape and the entire figure. What I'm doing right now is kind of shooting for a ballpark of value. I'm trying to get in the neighborhood of the value that I want. So we have values in the lights that are more or less unified together. There's a gradation that goes from lighter to darker. And then we have dark values here and here that are relatively in that dark mid-tone space. Eventually, this is one of the key points of blocking in fast that I think is really important, because it speaks to what's going to happen later, which is when you block in your midtones, what you're doing is saving space for the highlights and the darkest accents. They're one way that you can help yourself direct the viewer's eye to where you want to go. So choosing dark accents in really important salient areas is great. And I think you give yourself the opportunity to make that decision once the full composition is blocked in, by blocking in bold values that are in a mid-tone range. I think this is another moment where not painting details at first really, really helps you. When you need to make value changes, right? If you have only a few very simple shapes to kind of paint around, making your decision to kind of change values and actively doing that is really, really simple, right? Like I don't have a lot of detailed shapes that I need to paint around. I have just the boldest, simplest ones here, and I can change those values in kind of a heartbeat. I want to bring up the next really, really important point in how to block in fast. And it is, you need to fill the canvas. Fill the canvas as early as possible. Now by that I mean, let's say like, of course, maybe there's some blank areas up here, but I'm filling the context of the head that I intend to paint rapidly. This is because I would refer to this stage of the painting as the price of admission. You're not going to get anything done until this happens. So the faster you get the area that you intend to paint blocked in, the faster you can actually get to the job of refining the forms, finding the structure, searching for likeness, the things that I'm starting to do now, I couldn't do if I was still filling in the canvas around, if I hadn't gotten the whole painting blocked in. Get your context blocked in if you want to paint rapidly. Now, I'm thinking that I want more or less like a darker kind of upper area in this canvas and a lighter bottom area down here. So there's going to be a gradient from like darker at the top to lighter at the bottom. I think it's a decent time now that the canvas is like totally blocked in to get some of those darker aspects represented. So I'm going to go through the features. What I think you want to do is simply go through the features and sketch to the best of your ability what each feature looks like. So if you see a little dark ridge in between the upper eyelid and the brow ridge, sketch it in. Let's get into the nose and you'll see why it's great to have blocked it in with a kind of mid-tone value. Eventually, the nostrils and the cast shadows from the nose are going to be a little bit darker than the form shadows on the nose. And blocking it in as a mid-tone allows you that space to add in the darker values, cast shadows and ambient occlusions, and leave room for the form to show. And I'm just kind of painting in the shapes as they occur to me. Kind of painting it like I see it, trying to let the brush do the talking. And you can see how, you get a rough likeness by doing that. Also, to the point of how to paint faster, why do I care? Like, does it matter if you block in fast, if we all arrive there? Blocking in fast means that you get a result fast, which means you get to repeat that result over and over and over again more times than if you block in really slow. That is why I bothered to talk about it in the first place, is that I think if you block in fast, you'll be able to make repetitions fast, and that ultimately will serve you really well as you're attempting to get good at portraiture.